Round 18, NRL Fantasy Buy, Hold, Sell. It is a monstrous week, and I'm excited because we have a big man back. We got Biz back onto the roster, here to tell us everything about fantasy. Biz, has the New York move messed with you in fantasy, or are you still on top, mate?
Well, I'd like to think it hasn't messed me up in fantasy. 900 points last week, still around the top 500 mark, but I've been making a few suspect decisions. Brought Jack Bird in last week with his dodgy knee and all, and it's come back to bite me this week. I've woken up at 6 a.m. to do this recording to find out he hasn't been named. He's injured again. I clearly haven't learnt from this American NBA style load management, Anyway, but yeah, good to be back, Longy. I've seen you've done perfectly fine without me, but New York's been amazing. Been here 2 weeks. Like I said, the time zone makes it a bit trickier, but first of all, I just want to make a shout out to the New York Ironworkers team. So they're the local rugby union team here. They were playing in the quarter of the playoffs this week against Old DC. And just want to shout out to the team. They've reached out to me, got me a ticket, come watch their game. The atmosphere was awesome in old suburban New York. Shout out to the boys, shout out to Nick Feeks especially, who said he's a fan of the show. Really good performance from them. Unluckily, copped 2 yellow cards towards the back end of the game and just missed out by a few points. But they have a great team, and I'm looking forward to being a season ticket holder next year. But anyway, back to fantasy. Look, how are you looking, Longy? How have you been going without me?
Before we go into that, I'm going to need to see some highlights from these boys. Maybe we can post them up here next week. But yeah, in terms of fantasy, look, it's been going well. I grabbed Sandon Smith last week, which ended up being a really nice move. He cracked out 50 points. Went early on Trey Evans as well, just to try and grab a gun. Look, I'm not upset about it. He grabbed 40 points in a game that was pretty tough. As far as his scoring, I'm not super fussed about that. But let's roll into these picks here. So buy, hold, sell, launching in. Look, in the buys section first, I'm going to go with Payne Haas here. So we've got a couple of front rowers. For me, Payne is the top option, and I just think he's going to get it done down the stretch. Look, Tommy Flegler's copped an injury now, so he's going to be out for a few weeks at least. And that means that Payne Haas is going to have to play bigger minutes and play a bigger role in this Broncos team. The other thing is that we might have, look, Reece Walsh, as of recording right now, is actually in his hearing. So as news comes through, we'll add that into this as well. But the Broncos might need to lean more on Payne Haas through this period. And even when they don't, and he's backing up from Origin, he still posts 50 points. So he's just one of those reliable tier 1 guns who he's going to do it every week, every year, every decade. And if you can get him in, it's a great move.
Yeah, I agree. And the thing is, with only one Origin game left, missing, buying in a gun who might miss one game or, get a quick rest in one game, it doesn't hurt as much. You're still getting points now. And we're running out of time in the season to really fly up those ranks. Another front rower here is Adam Fanua-Blake. Now, he has been going gangbusters in the last 5 to 10 rounds. He has become the enforcer in the Warriors pack, playing 65, 70 minutes, and he is churning out 60 after 60 after 60. 69 points last week in about 60 minutes. My only consideration with Fanua-Blake is that with the Warriors getting healthier, the minutes in the pack is shrinking. So I don't really know if Fanua-Blake is going to continue getting that 65 to 70 minute role. As Dylan Walker's back. What else? Who else is back? Barnett's back. And there's a couple of guys that are getting back. And then Tohu's already playing a big minute role in the middle. So I feel like they're kind of vulturing each other. Like Tohu played 65 minutes last week, Fanua-Blake 60 minutes. But other than that, gun scorer, plays around 19, as good as it gets. And he's still a keeper, even if he's playing 60 minutes. He might just not hit the soaring heights he has been. But I really like Fanua-Blake. I'm trying to get him in my team. He's a big point of difference option, and he has the capability. He's like a very attacking prop, so he's got that capability, just like Haas, to score 80, 90 points and crack the 100 mark.
Yeah, he's a bit of an Andrew Fafita sort of style scorer with the way he plays. Look, can always crack a team open. The Warriors are playing good footy as well, so he's only going to roll on that. Next guy here is Ruben Garrick, and look, 671K. We talk about him a lot just because he's changed positions a lot recently. So he went from the wing where he was playing well into center. He had that 100-point game. Came back to earth. Tommy Turbo got hurt. Now he's at fullback for the rest of the year. Look, it's not the price you want to pay for Ruben Garrick, but I think at fullback, he's probably one of the more reliable options there because I look at guys like Tedesco, Jareem Bula, who we're going to talk about later in this video. and I'm not fully convinced on those guys. You could maybe look at Dylan Edwards. The absence of Latrell and Pappenhausen, the injury also hurts that. Ruben Garrett could be that reliable option who just cranks out meters, breaks a lot of tackles, looks for offloads, and creates enough attacking stats to stay viable.
Yeah, I really like Garrick, a fullback, and they're going to have to lean on him. His teammate, Daly Cherry Evans, 718K. That's a great price for him. He has historically been one of that tier one half guns who averages 60 plus. Look, he could probably wait till round 20 on Cherry Evans, but I genuinely think, like I was saying before, at this point of the season, he'll get one game, he'll miss one game. He's definitely going to back up with all the injuries Manly has. So I think if you need a half now, go out there and get Cherry Evans. And it's the same logic that I got in Harry Grant last week. But there's not really too much analysis you need to do on Cherry Evans. He's just been the same player for 5-6 years. He's a dominant kicker. He likes to tackle for a half. He's almost like Dylan Brown in a way that he racks up 25, 30 tackles a game, which is pretty rare for a half. He doesn't miss too many, and he likes taking the line on. And most importantly, under these new rules, he loves a good offload, which, you rack those up. It's 4 points each time. Cherry Evans is a great shout, and at 718K, this is pretty much as cheap as you'll get him. He might have one more price drop before like 20, 30K. If you can get a 50, 60 point plus performance in this week, go get him.
Yeah, and look, he might have to take more responsibility here too with Turbo out. So that could potentially play in the positives. I mean, there's negatives as well, in that he can't just feed Turbo, but it could be good. Last guy here is Dave for feeder, and look, he's full price. He's full price, 852K. I've had Fafita all year and been a big believer in him, and he's just been producing week after week. There was that one game where he backed up from Origin, scored 15 points, but the Titans have just beaten the Broncos. They're on the precipice of a top 8 spot, and they're not going to be able to afford to rest a guy like Fafita after the next Origin game. So if you're low on edges, maybe you're running one of those Parramatta boys. They don't play this week. Maybe you've got Eli Katoa like I do, which is devastating because he's out again. You might need a guy to plug that spot. And look, Dave Fafita, we're getting guns right now. If your cap's doing the right things, then you're getting guns and cash outs. And Fafita is that A1 edge back row gun, especially this year. So, look, nothing more to be said about him. I'll jump into the next group here, the cash cows. And I'll throw up Piakura first. So, a couple of thoughts from me here. I don't love Piakura as a buy. And I had a look at him last week as well. He scored 31 points last week in a game where he played 80 minutes. And as a back row, he had a line break as well. So his scoring base is really poor. Like, think of him as like, if you had Edric Lee last year, he's a bit of an Edric Lee scorer without the attacking upside, but in the back row. So for me, I'm not a big fan of it, but at the same time, the Broncos do have some nice fixtures. So if he's going to score well, it's going to be big attacking plays. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I agree. I wasn't going to compare him to Edric Lee, but maybe more of a Jacob Host type of guy, where he might crack open 40, 45 plus, just given how good a team he's in. But he's just going to rack up missed tackles. He doesn't have a high work rate. At 280K, the only reason he's attempting is because, like you mentioned, I've got Hopgood and Madison in my team, so I'm a short of an edge this week. So it's either I go get Fafita this week at a max price, and I can do that, or I can just get a cash out, start accumulating cash. So we're going to need cash in the next few weeks. Right? Cleary's coming back in a few rounds after Origin. You're going to need to get guys like Isaiah Yo, David Fafita if you haven't already. All these players. So he is interesting for me, but I'm not expecting him to be more than a 30-point scorer, even if he keeps the 80-minute role. If he can just be not a red dot, but a backup for a red dot any given week, or just play here or there when I need the depth, 1 week stopgap, I'll take that. But he's not as exciting as this next bloke, Sandon Smith. I still can't get over the name, how they've got a reserve hooker called Sandon Smith, but I'll leave this one to you, Long, because you did mention you bought him in and he's doing real well for you.
Yeah, look, I wasn't desperate to buy him last week by any means. I thought he was a bit of a watch and see kind of option. But at the same time, I needed a cash out. And at that time, I think he was 223K, something around that price. So, look, for me, it was just a case of I got to cash out. I want a guy who plays this week. I want a guy who's got a decent chance of scoring well. And he cracked out that 50. For him, he's doing the majority of the kicking next to Kiri, which is a big plus. If Kiri were to go down, the next option there in the halves is probably Joey Manu, who doesn't kick much either. So I think there's some reasonably good security as far as his scoring profile goes as that dominant number 7. The only risk there is that Sam Walker may come back into the team at some point, but I'm hoping by that point in the season, I don't need him to be a scorer for me. So, look, if you need a cash out, Sandon Smith is infinitely better than Pia Kura in my eyes, unless you need an edge back row. Obviously, that's the one case. But Sandon Smith has scoring upside. In these games where he scored 40 and 50 the last 2 weeks, he's only had a try assist, I believe, his attacking stats in those games. So it's not like he's tinning these scores up. Decent option. The other thing is, I think I saw him go into hooker a bit last week as well when Turpin went off. So that's kind of interesting for his versatility. And if he's that guy that moves to hooker for 20 minutes for Brandon Smith, even when he comes back, depending on whether Turpin stays on the bench, that's kind of a little boost for his scoring as well. Speaking of hookers, and a real hooker here at the same price as Sandon, probably a better scoring profile, but a little bit of risk in his minutes. Jake Simpkin, do you like this guy, and would you buy him if you didn't have him right now?
Yeah, I am going to buy him. I don't have him right now, but I think with his break even of minus 20 and, Coruscant's not back for another 4 weeks, potentially, I think, and he plays that round 19 bye, he's pretty much a must-have in my opinion, because although I don't really trust his scoring output, he's been a bit hit or miss in the past. And if he's playing 50 to 60 minutes, I'm only expecting 30 to 40 from him. But even with 3 or 4 30 to 40s, he's making 150K, if not more. And the thing I like about Jake Simpkin is his kind of run as the hooker coincides with Cleary coming back. So you can come take him, hopefully make 150 to 200K out of him, and then cash him out in like round 22 when Nathan Cleary comes back to try and upgrade someone else to Nathan Cleary. So I'll need a lot of funds to get Kleza. So Jake Simpkins, the guy I'm looking at to bridge that gap and give me scoring for the next 3 to 4 weeks. Because he probably scoring 30 to 40 each week, which isn't amazing, but he does have upside for more. As you saw in the last couple of weeks, he's cracked, almost 50 in both games. Albeit,
a question for you, Biz, on Jake here. Would you say he's a bit of a simp in real life, or do you think the name's just a coincidence?
I'm not going to answer that question, mate. You're stitching me up here. Anyway, he look, the thing with ignoring what you just said, but in those lines, he has been touted as the next big hooker for the Tigers for a while, but for some reason he just hasn't come in and lit the game on fire. And it's same with Little, right? Like he came in really highly rated. Little played really well. Like you've seen him at the Dragons for some reason that he keeps churning out really good games, at least with the ball in hand, but they don't get the minutes. They get dropped. I'm not sure what it is. They might be poor trainers or they might have poor defensive issues that I'm not picking up. But Jake Simpkins, guy, he's had the opportunity but hasn't really taken it, and they've clearly don't see him as a future because they've gone and bought Coruscant as their captain. But I've seen potential from him, but I don't think the Tigers management will hand him the keys.
I haven't looked too at the minutes from that last game because he scored 52 points in 47 minutes, which is fantastic, but also concerning for minutes. The thing there, though, is they used 3 subs on hookers in that game. So they brought De Silva on for him, brought Simpkin back on for De Silva, and then towards the end when the game was out of reach, then brought De Silva back on for about 10, 15 minutes. So I think in a normal game script, we're going to see more like 60 minutes for Simpkin. I don't think they're going to waste 3 subs on that in a regular week. I agree. I mean, I got on him a couple of weeks ago, and he went great for that bye round. He's a good option. Look, just when they're 220K, it's hard to resist. Saying that, this next guy, Khaled Rajab, I will be resisting this option. And there's a few reasons. Look, I don't know as much about Rajab as I do about the other guys on this list. But more generally, so your clicker's a little loud there. But yeah, more generally, with Rajab, it's a tough situation being an attacking half in a Bulldogs side because the Bulldogs are not producing much. Their forward pack is a little soft. I just don't have a lot of belief there. And Oluwapu, he could come back at any moment. Josh Reynolds is lingering around, and there's always a headline in bringing him back as well. I'm skipping this one. Are you the same?
I've seen Rajab play a couple of times this year, and I've been reasonably impressed by how he's looked. But the Bulldogs don't impress me. So
Mm.
I just think that they've not been afraid to chop and change things this year. And they've kind of just done a mass clean out of the team. If you look at the team list, there's quite a few new names there, or changes. So he's a risky guy. He's interesting in a way that at this point of the year, if a full base cash out and a red dot isn't the end of the world.
Wing
There's
fullback and half as well.
Yeah,
Dual position.
it's a good positioning, and someone I could be looking at this week. I don't really know what his scoring profile looks like. These players next to Matt Burton. Matt Burton's obviously going to be the dominant half. Yeah,
Yeah.
Rajab's going to need to be, a real tackler, a ball runner, a tackle breaker, offloader to really be worth his money. But at 220k, you can't really go wrong. But if I was buying Rajab, I would have in my eyes that he would be a red dot towards the back of the season. Like I would not go in with expectations of like a 50-point scorer, but someone who might get a few weeks. You're using purely as a cash out, and if he plays towards the back end of the season, that's just a plus.
Yeah. Look, he doesn't seem to be much of a kicker. He could kick on. We'll see what happens to him. Last guy here, Suo Wong. He's been named on the bench. There is a lot of hype on this guy, to the point where I was in draft leagues where he was getting taken with the late picks, and sometimes a bit embarrassingly early with the amount of hype he was getting. Again, just another cash out option, I guess. Look, I'll lead in on this one. He's on the bench this week when they're running Victor Radley and Nat White as their starting edge back rowers. Now, there's two options here. One, that's actually their team on the weekend, and he is so far down the pecking order that he's not even on it. Option two, Trent Robinson's protecting him from the headlines, and he's going to come in to start at the last minute. Then if he kicks on, none of those other back rowers are impressing, and maybe he can keep that spot. Now, this is totally up to you as a fantasy team manager, what you believe. For me, I think Robinson's usually been pretty calm, pretty sort of slow paced in bringing rookies in. And I think Suo Wong will have a really slow introduction to first grade this year. I think he's an option for next year. So I'll be skipping this one. But yeah, do you feel the same way, or are you thinking he might be a guy who bursts on?
Yeah, I don't think that he's going to be like a must buy this year, to be honest. I feel like he is going to be eased in. There's just a lot of second row talent for the Roosters. I know they're not setting the world on fire, but at least big names. They've got the Butcher boys. Obviously, the reason we're even discussing Long is Angus and Satilia are gone for probably the season. But in saying that, Angus and Satilia didn't start this season. They weren't there in the first 5 to 10 weeks, and Wong wasn't there. So and they've added Nathan Brown, who I actually think has played pretty well for them over the last couple of weeks. Hasn't set the world on fire either, but he's been solid, and he looks like he's improving. I would probably skip him because although he has the upside, he's just too much of a risk for me. And if I feel like I had to get a second row cash out this week, it would be Piakora, because he does look like he's more reliable for the Broncos. But in saying that, Piakora doesn't really have a track record either, so he could get dropped any given week. So it's really a risk tolerance. I personally would be avoiding Wong. I just don't think he's going to be there. But it's an interesting situation because Radley, I don't know when the last time he's played edge. So there is a chance that, with the Roosters losing, if they keep losing and they go look to blood to the future, then Wong might get more minutes towards the back end of the season.
Oh, I can't imagine that world where the Roosters are blooding guys and have given up on the finals. In fact, I don't think they will give up at all. I reckon they're pretty proud of that record, and they'll go for it.
I feel like they're always going to be sniffing around the 8. Like, there's always going to be a chance, and they're going to like drop off to like 14, 15, 16. And if they do, there's
maybe.
But there's like bigger, true. But there's like bigger alarm bells at that point, I think. And I'm not sure Wong will be their answer.
Yeah. I'll throw this next group in here, and this is a bit of a different segment here. So let us know in the comments if you like this here, and let us know who you're going to be buying this week. But these are the big plans, guys. So the guys where you're looking at your final team and you're thinking, all right, I'm short a middle here, or I'm short a edge backer, I'm short a half. I want to aim for one of these guys over the next month of footy. First one here is Cam Murray. Look, 652K. We've talked about him a bit before. He's just way too cheap. He's way too cheap. but you can't buy him right now because he plays this week. He has Origin next week. He has a bye the week after that. So just watch him play this week. Just think about those points in your team in 3 weeks' time. Imagine that. And then, buy him in 3 weeks because he's going to be about 650K. It's great value.
Yeah, he looked good last week. Big score in limited minutes, backing up from Origin. But it's a similar kind of story with his edge back row, Komatangi. Now he's a bit different because he may play next week as well as this week. But there is a risk with the Blues going 2-0 down. They start bringing new blood, and they probably should bring in some new blood because they were poor in game 2. And Colin Matangi, he's one for the future. He's played really well. He was on the cusp before his injury at the start of the year, so there's a chance he makes Origin. And if you bring him this week, like Murray, he'll miss the next 2 games if he makes the Origin team. But other than that, he's been a real good scorer on the edge. My only concern with Komatangi at the end of the year is, do you really believe he's a top tier gun? Because when I look at the edge, I feel like my top 2 players are probably Fifita and Bateman. Now that Bateman's playing at lock, and then you got Papali, Hopgood, Madison. The dual position players you can fill in there as well. But Kolomatangi for me is just 1 tier below them. But at his price, if you can't afford to go get that top tier gun, then he's a good option as well.
Yeah, him and he's on this list, but Olakawatu is about 605K, something like that. Similar minor Origin risk, good price point. They just don't have that base, these guys. So when they have a quiet game, it's a 30, 35 point game. Whereas when Bateman has a quiet game, Feeder has a quiet game, it's 45 points at a minimum. So that's what you're costing yourself there. Next guy here is Isaiah Yeo. And look, really simple. Isaiah Yeo is a fantastic fantasy scorer. He gets rested sometimes after Origin games because that's Cleary's strategy, and that could happen in round 20. It probably won't happen to Yo in round 20 is my guess, but it definitely could.
Yeah, I agree. And the interesting thing about Yo is, and the reason why he's 850K even after Comic rest, is when Penrith rest their players, they give them a proper rest. It's like you're not playing at all. Whereas it would have been nice if it's like one of those, play 30 minutes, just help us out for a bit and then go off for early rest, and it'll drop the price. But that's not happening for Yo. He's so consistent. If you look at Isaiah Yo's scores, I think he's dropped below 60 like 2 or 3 times. And when I say drop below 60, it's like 58. So he is as good as it gets in terms of consistency. I will be rushing to bring him in. He's averaging 65, not that highly owned. No one really talks about Yo. It's crazy. This guy averages 65 and no one talks about him. I hyped him up to the start of the year. And like the very first podcast we did, I hyped up Yo. But I said that you couldn't really start with Yo and Clear at the start of the year because they both had that round 3 or round 2 bye. But he's just got 80 minutes. Like they've really leaned on him this year with all their departures, and he's rewarding fantasy coaches. But I can't wait. Like him and Cleary in round 22. If I can bring them into my team, I'll be real happy.
Yeah, no, if you got cash to spend, he's that guy. Next guy here is Cam Munster. And look, do you have any interest in Cam Munster? Because I've had quite a few questions coming to my DMs asking, should I go Cherry Evans? Should I go Cam Munster?
Yeah, I do have interest in Munster, but the halves this year are Cleary, Hines, Moses, and Sean Johnson. Like they're the 4 halves you need. Sean Johnson averaging 65. Moses is averaging like some ridiculous 80 plus in the last 5 rounds. Something just it's Munster. I guess the thing with halves is averages don't matter as much when you're in that 55 to 60 range. Like guys like Moses and Sean Johnson and Cam Munster and Cherry Owens, they're pretty much all the same. It's just who goes on that run, whose run are you predicting? Like they could all average 55, but one guy like Moses, he was the 55 average guy 6 weeks ago, and now look at him. He's at the top of that picking order, and then. Now Cam Munster could be the same. He could go on a hot run and be a 60 plus average at the end of the season. So I'm interested in that regard, and he's a lot cheaper than them. And Munster's shown the ability to crack the 100 mark. So if I'm kind of getting myself into him now. Like I'm kind of saying, okay, maybe it's worth it.
He's pretty juicy. There is a bit of risk around Origin. He can sometimes sort of clock out a bit or pick up nickels. So that's one thing I'm watching for. But the other thing too is if you're watching this and you're maybe a first timer or your season hasn't gone to plan and your salary cap's looking really rough and you just want a guy where he's going to play every week, he's going to score pretty well, have a look at his halves partner. Have a look at Jarom Hughes. Look, it's not a guy that if your season's gone well, you're not buying him. But if you're desperate and you need a guy who's about 550K and is kind of a borderline gun who could go on one of those runs that you were talking about there, Biz, then Jarom Hughes is a guy I'd be looking at. Last group here, and they're in a similar vein. I'll talk about a few guys here because look, Sean Lane's the first one. He'll come back very soon. He'll come back into the team. He has a pretty high break even. Probably dropped to the mid 500s kind of thing, which is a big discount on him from the start of the year. There are a few other guys like that in the similar price point. I'm forgetting who they all are now. But actually, you know what? A guy like Liam Martin, when he's played 80 minutes, he's been fantastic. And if they drop Hosking out of the team completely, then maybe he goes back to that post-origin. I'd need to see it first before making that move. But he's closer to 500K, which, again, if you're desperate, right? If you're desperate, then these are the guys you can have a look at.
Yeah, I agree. You have to be pretty desperate because at this point, I don't want these mid-level guys. Like I'm going out there to try and get the top player at every position. Bit me on the bum last week with Jack Bird, but I'm not looking at guys like Lane. The thing, like, I know this is kind of you're not talking about Sean Lane directly; it's more that category. But if I look at someone like Sean Lane, like he's only had that pedigree once in a gangbuster year last year. He hasn't played well this year. Cartwright is playing amazing for the Eels. Eels are stacked in the forwards. I don't even know if Lane comes back in and plays 80 minutes straight away, especially if like
also who plays next to Sean Lane.
Yeah, well, I would assume Cartwright and like Lane start, and then Davey gets dropped out, or but
I mean, halves wise though, who's his half?
Oh yeah, well yeah, that's true. I mean, a lot of Sean Lane's brilliance last year came from Dylan Brown. So RC has played really well, don't get me wrong, but he plays very differently to Dylan Brown. He doesn't have that silky smooth pass going left to Lane. He doesn't have that combination that Dylan Brown and Lane have. But yeah, look, it's not really like just pointing out Sean Lane here, but it's just that category of like that mid-range player who will fill up, but you really want to be going. These are the big plans, guys, but look at our buys, like, Fafita, Haas, these are the guys you should be getting, etc.
Oh, 100%. The buys are the buys. Then on this list, it's probably Cam Murray, Isaiah Yeo, Cam Munster. Are the three real ones here. Yeah. We just like throw a few options around. But look, we do have some coaches who people ask me questions where they'll go, I've only got 500K and I need a gun.
Yeah. Look, I totally understand that. And it's situational, right? Your team composition now, you might not just be able to afford these guys, or you just need bench players, or you've got like 600K to fill a spot. And the guys like Sean Lane and Connor Matangi are perfect for like a 17th, 18th man. But if you can get the funds, or plus you might just be running out of trades at this point of the year, so you can't really cash players out. So they're good options.
Look, you do get 8 more very soon as well, after round 20, so that's pretty juicy. Last group here is the hold or sell. So quick fire, hold or sell. Zach Hosking.
Sell.
Absolutely a sell. He's been dropped. James Tedesco.
Hold. He's coming off a hot run, like where he was one of the best wing fullbacks.
He's so annoying to own.
He is annoying, but like he's like also like one of these guys who could just like 100, or
just go off. He got Manly this week. He's got Manly this week. So
Manly he's can't defend. Tedesco,
if he's flopped this week though,
you'd be
I mean,
if he flopped this week. But like Raiders are a pretty good team this year, and he's been looking good before that. And there's just not much inspiration coming from the wing fullbacks anyway. So
Sandon Smith posted a 50. Why can't Tedesco? Matt true gun on the team.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll talk about another guy here just quickly. Jarian Buller. I think I've been looking at this a bit. I think Brooks is gone. I think the Tigers' attack looked anemic without Brooks. They bring Dane Laurie into 6. I feel like he's a bit of a Ponga sort of style 6, so I don't know if he's going to feed his 1 as well as they were previously. There's big potential that the Tigers fall apart down the stretch, and Buller really struggles because if you look at his previous big scores, he's sort of gone low to mid 30s then plus a big tinny try for those 60-point games. So you're not getting those big tries, which regression is going to happen. Then he's probably not that guy. And I think a lot of people have penciled him in as this keeper. No. And I think he's going to disappoint a lot of people.
I 100% agree with you. On the first point, I don't think the halves were feeding him that much great ball in the first place. I think a lot of Buller's points were just more scrappy plays and a bit of talent around, just catching forwards around the ruck or like coming from broken play where someone's chucked an offload out the back and bounced around, he's picked it up and run 30 meters or whatnot. But I agree. Like, I don't see him as that top tier gun because you can see he kind of reminds me of Lachlan Miller's scores at the start of the year, where he just had that phase where he boomed and then he kind of came back to earth. Yeah. So I feel like he's pretty similar. In saying that, people running out of trades this year, you could probably just at this point, the thing is, there's no wing fullbacks who average 60. So it's not like even if you average 40, it's like you're not getting crushed there. Like Latrell's the only guy who looks like he might be a 55, 60 guy, but who even knows when he'll play again. So
he's not a sell. It's more than just earmarking. Like, remember we were talking about Hamaso a while back, and so I said, look, in 3 weeks people will be selling him. I feel very similarly about Buller. It's probably more like 4 or 5 weeks, but it's just not sustainable what he's doing. But anyway, Tedesco hold for that reason. That all fed back in. So I think he's more of a keeper than Buller is. Jack Bird?
Man, like I woke up this morning, thinking about, I want to see you, Longy, you want to do our favorite podcast, and then I got a message, Jack Bird out. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? Like, I literally went out to get him last week because he was supposed to be that top gun in the center position. Like, my goal is literally to get the top player. I haven't actually read too much into this injury. I've heard an article that he's actually said he's hurt his other knee. Like, I want to keep him, but I'm down to fullback and a center this week. And Bird, like, he is really annoying me this year. Like, I bought him twice, and he's like messed around with his knees. And I hate load management with the knees. It sounds like he doesn't know what's going on. Like, the article sounded like I got no idea what's happening with my knees. So, based on that, I think he's a sell. It's just unfortunate for me. Like, I couldn't have. I thought he would be over. But poor foresight from me. I should have just been like old guy who's looked like he runs like a crab and he's just got weird knees and elbows going everywhere. I should have foreseen this, but unless there's more
information, have a lot of spare knees though, so that would have been good in theory. And look, don't feel too bad. A lot of people bought Connolly Lemuelu a month ago as well, and he's right here on this hold or sell list. For mine, it's minus 80K over the last 2 weeks, which sucks. Which really sucks. Look, 588K. I came into this week thinking hard sell, but I'm looking at that price and sort of going, how long do the Dolphins persist with? He's been on the bench for games where they have not played well. Dolphins, they have been, Paris set a record against them last week, and when he came on, I'm not saying he was the cause of it, but I don't think Lemuelu missed any tackles. I think he looked
well.
like he had intent about him in defense, which is what's going to impress Wayne Bennett. Forced an error with one of his shots. Like, I just could see him getting back into the team. Then all of a sudden, everyone wants to buy him back, and he plays that round 19 buy. So I'm leaning with a soft hold, but don't be surprised if you see my team on the weekend and I've reconsidered this.
Yeah, here's a tricky one because I agree that he's too talented to be left out of that edge spot. But in saying that, he is a bit of a shady defender at times. Like, I know he defended well against Para more generally, but he did cop, like, he was kind of on the edge when a couple of players just skirted past him a few times. He does miss a few tackles. So I know you said he didn't miss any against Para, but if you look at his play, he doesn't miss like 3, 4, 5 tackles a game. But I think his attacking upside and tenacity it makes up for that. And I don't think the replacements they've got in there for him are doing that much better. I think.
Yeah, what were they down by? Like, when he came on, was it 30-0?
Yeah, it was like 30-4 or something. It was something ridiculous. But
so they're getting pumped. Like, Felice Kafusi keeps a spot there. Kenny Bromwich, I thought they were playing good footy when Bromwich was in the middle, personally. They've elevated Ray Stone to that starting big minutes lock role. I don't think that's really worked for them. I think that was a really poor move to make against Parramatta because Para's just such a big pack. And even like, Junior Paulo started on the bench, and Ogden is a massive unit anyway. And he's not even in the top 5 middle forwards para. Like, we just rolled straight over the top of the the Dolphins last week.
The thing with
so
Ray
I think
Stone is,
up.
like Ray Stone, he puts on big hits and he's got great technique, but I wouldn't say he's a dominant defender.
No.
He's not like Radley or a Gerbo where he chops people in half consistently and slows it down. He's just has the occasional big hit in him, but that's a different discussion. But Connolly,
he comes off the bench.
Yeah,
right. Like, and that's probably his closest comparison.
Yeah, he's like a budget Cam McInnes, I feel. Yeah. But like Cam McInnes he's good with the ball in hands. Ray Stone doesn't offer much with the ball in his hand.
It's more a compliment on Cam.
Yeah,
he's a good player. But
yeah.
So Lemuelu, hold or sell?
I'm probably holding because I think even if he's playing 60 minutes, he's probably getting 35 points. So
okay, I agree.
It's not the end of the world. Yeah.
And last guy here, Oluwapu, hard sell to finish for me.
Yeah.
Sell. Well, let us know in the comments who you're going to be buying for Carl Oluwapu or whoever else you're selling this week. I want to know your trades. I want to know how happy you are with them. And I want to know if you're going to win your head-to-head leagues as well, because we're close enough to be able to call that, right?
Yeah,
anyway, we'll see you on the next one. We're going to be posting a bunch of videos. We've got Biz in New York, me still stuck here in Parramatta.
If you're in New York, come visit me. Shoot us a message like, the Ironworkers did. If you're in New York, let's get a beer or coffee or watch the game together at like 2 a.m. in the morning.
Love it. NRL Community New York, right here. Let's go. See you next time.